Okay, it's 1 o'clock. I'd like to call this meeting to order. The proceedings of this meeting will be recorded and made available on the internet. We will move on to item 1.2 of our agenda, which is roll call. And I'd like to ask our clerk, Jessie Clark, to please call the roll.
Thank you. Mayor Lamstead, are you present?
I'm present.
Deputy Mayor Armstrong?
I am present.
Councillor Franzen?
Present.
Councillor Cadigan?
Present.
And Councillor Braybrook sends his regrets. For staff, we have Donna Taggart, CAO Treasurer.
Present.
Steve Buckman, Director of Emergency Services.
Present.
Dylan Kosh, Director of Recreation and Facilities.
Present.
Evan Grieger, Director of Public Works.
Present.
Barb Waldron, Director of Building and Planning, CBO.
Present.
Adele Arbor, Planner.
Present.
Bianca Dragicevic, Deputy Clerk.
Present.
Derek Bertram, Planning Technician.
Present.
Jenny Smith, Recreation and Facilities Coordinator.
Present.
And Jessie Clark, Director of Corporate Services. Clerk is present.
Okay, thank you very much for calling the roll, Jessie. We can move on to item 1.3 of our agenda, which is land acknowledgement and moment of reflection. We respectfully acknowledge that Trent Lakes in Peterborough County are located on the Treaty 20 Mississauga territory and in the traditional territory of the Mississauga and Chippewa nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaty First Nation, which include Alderville, Beausoleil, Curve Lake, Georgina Island, Hiawatha, Rama, and Scugog Island First Nations. Trent Lakes respectfully acknowledges that the Williams Treaty First Nations are the stewards and caretakers of these lands and waters in perpetuity, and that they continue to maintain this responsibility to ensure their health and integrity for generations to come. We will now take a moment to reflect on these principles and our duties and responsibilities as members of council. Thank you, council, and everyone in the gallery. Okay, we can move on to item 2 of our agenda, which is disclosure of pecuniary interest. If any member of council has a pecuniary interest on an item on the agenda, please disclose it now or anytime during the meeting prior to discussing anything you have an interest on the item you have an interest in. I'm seeing none. We can move on to the approval of the agenda, and I think Jessie Clark, you have a request.
Thank you. The request is to add an additional correspondence for action item being item 12.7 from the Buckhorn Community Center, requesting a letter of support for a grant application. And I just ask that the agenda be approved as amended.
Okay, does anyone have willing to make that motion? I see Councillor Franzen for a mover and Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a seconder. Any conversation? I'm seeing none. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. We can move on now to item 4 of our agenda, and item 4.1 and 4.2 are our special council meeting of April 12th and our regular council meeting of April 16th. If anyone likes to discuss anything or is prepared to make a motion. Let's see, Deputy Mayor Armstrong, go ahead.
Motion to adopt both of those sets of minutes.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? I see Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. Any other conversation? I'm seeing none. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. We can move on to item 5 of our agenda, which is committees and boards. And item 5.1 is liaison reports for council boards and committees. Does anyone have anything to discuss? I'm seeing none. We can move on to item 6 of our agenda, which is our statutory public meeting pursuant to the Planning Act, which we have none. Item 7 is business arising from that statutory public meeting, so we will obviously have none. Item 8 is presentations. We have none. And item 9 is delegations. We have none. I thought we had many people in our gallery. We'd have at least one delegation. We can move on to item 10 of our agenda, which is staff reports. And item 10.1 is public works. 10.1.1, Evan Grieger, would you like to speak to this item, please?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor Lamstead. Through you, Mayor, to members of council, before you today is just an update report regarding the new dedicated mechanics facility and recreation and facilities facility. We haven't worked out the official name yet. Anyways, just to give you an update, you know, things are moving along quite well there. As you can see through the pictures, steel structure is completely enclosed. They're getting garage doors up as we speak right now. We have a lot of the interior masonry work completed. There's plumbing being completed, interior electrical work being completed. Budget has gone very well. We're still within budget and still projected to be on time. And it's just been, honestly, it's been a pleasure working with both the consultant and the contractor on this job. It's been one of the few construction projects that seem to be good news. There's a lot of times in construction projects where you're hitting delays or finding supplies that you can't get, but thankfully so far at this point, we haven't hit those yet. So it doesn't mean it's not going to happen, but so far so good. So just before you, just to give you an update, and obviously here to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Evan. Please touch some wood or something. Not to jinx something. Thank you. Does anyone have any comments or questions for Evan? I'm seeing none, I think. Oh, go ahead,
Just,
Councilor Franzen.
a quick one. The sand facility, the storage for the winter sand.
Yep.
Has that been started yet, Evan?
No, thank you, Councilor Franzen, through you, Mayor Lamb, said to Councilor Franzen. So we actually just completed last week emptying the sand dome. So the process has started. So now the next step is demolish and then get the new ones installed. So yeah, the process has happened. It's a lot of sand in there to get out, but it's good now because we're looking at our other domes, which are now full. So when we come to, next year when we're going to fill our domes, we actually only have one dome to fill, which actually saves us money because we're not, having extra material brought in. So yeah, we're well on our way.
Excellent, go ahead.
Through the mayor, yeah, is it scheduled to be completed at the same time as the building is completed, Evan?
Yes, thank you, Councilor Franzen. Through you, Mayor Lamb, side to Councilor Franzen. Yes, the plan is to have it all completed. Actually, the same dome to be completed prior to the completion of the building. But substantial completion for the building, I believe, is the end of October, and the idea to have the sand dome structure completed by the end of August.
Go ahead, one more.
One more question. We were talking about a wall for sound retention. Is that still required, or?
Yes, thank you, Councilor Franzen. Through you, Mayor Lamb, said to Councilor Franzen. Yes, so it is still required. We have thankful for our consultant who's actually proposed a different method of providing the same sort of sound attenuation, but not utilizing a sound wall that you would typically see on the 401. Instead, we're utilizing earth, armor stones, and some plantings to actually make it a more visually appealing wall. And that was something where the consultant sort of came to us and said, hey, can we look into other options? And I said, yeah, absolutely. And it's actually found some cost savings even within that. So it's been quite positive news story, and it will look much nicer. Like I said, instead of looking like you're driving down the highway looking at this brick wall that's kind of not very visually appealing, you'll have a nice armor stone with some plantings and some trees and stuff, and it'll fit into the landscapes, which will be much nicer.
Okay. Any other comments? See, none. I like the little eyebrow feature on the front there. It breaks up the front of the building a bit. Looks kind of neat. I like it. Thank you very much, Evan. We can move on to item 10.1.2 of our agenda. Oh, we should probably get a motion. Yeah. Anybody prepared to make a motion for the previous item on our agenda? Deputy Mayor Armstrong. Motion.
A motion to receive the report with thanks and good news.
Councilor Franzen was the seconder. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. We can move on now to 10.1.2 of our agenda. Evan Grieger, our Director of Public Works, can you please speak to this item?
Thank you, Mayor Lamstead. Through you, Mayor, to members of council, before you today is a report regarding the design of the Buckhorn Fire Station in Public Works Depot. With me today is obviously the Fire Chief, Steve Brockrank, as well as the Project Manager for the consultant, Kevin Hawley. So I'm just sort of putting out the recommendation here that when you receive the report, and two, you just direct staff to sort of figure out ways how we can fund it. The details of the report are there. I'm here to answer any questions, and Kevin's just going to give a quick little blurb just on the cost estimate and sort of where we're at, sort of thing, why we're bringing this to council at this point.
Okay. Welcome, Kevin Hawley.
Perfect, thank you. So yes, at this point, we're probably at the conceptual design, maybe a little bit past it. There's just some concerns on our end that we haven't been given a budget. So we've went through with your staff and we've created the conceptual design of what's been requested. And we've gone out and got a Class D estimate. And in the report, it mentions that this is fairly high level. But from our standpoint, we don't want to not waste, but spend any more money of the municipality's money going through with the design that they're not going to be happy with the end dollar figure. So we're not saying that this is the end dollar figure. This is kind of a ballpark, but we need to know at this point in the design, are we in the right ballpark? Is this palatable to the council? This size of facility for this price tag? We were hesitant. We do have a more in-depth costing report done by a costing consultant with line-by-line items, but at this point, it's not beneficial to go through those line-by-line items. Some of those items are required by code, especially on the firefighting side. And I would say it's only going to get There's only going to be more stringent on that side with some of the ventilation in rooms required. But at this point, before we continue down the design and give you a better cost estimate than 20-30%, that is quite a variance. However, we need some direction that the township, again, is okay with that range. There will be opportunities for cost savings and additional items or subtractional items later on. Some of them might be like electric charging stations. We could reduce the amount of paving on the site. There is a specified number of bays. But another thing I would say is if the need is there now or projected to be there, it is cheaper to put those bays in now than in future. I can design it for future expansion, but that expansion per square foot is going to cost you more down the road. And even this estimate in itself is a snapshot at a particular time, April of this year. That cost estimate will change in 6 months, especially based on construction materials and the way the market is going. They have an indexing in the report. I believe it's 5% for this year and 6% for next year going up. I don't know if that's accurate. I can only guarantee you that in my mind, it's only going to go up from that April cost estimate cost. The cost of building material, we're not seeing going down. Labor is increasing. So yeah, and I'm just here to answer general questions. If you're looking for line by line item, I can try my best. However, I would advise that at this point, we're still at a high level. You've submitted an RFP at the time that didn't have a cost estimate, so we've just built this off staff requests and what they've directed us as required. But at this point, we really need a budget to work towards, and if this budget is acceptable or not to the council.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anyone have any comments or questions? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Thank you. And through you, Mayor Lamson, I have 2 questions, if I may. The first one, in the facilities working group back in 2020, their recommendation was 5 bays for fire and 2 double bays for public works. I personally have no clue what the requirements would be. That number has increased from then, and I'm just looking for a justification for why we're looking at an increased number of bays.
You want me to jump first?
Sure.
Take the first one.
Yeah, through you, Mayor, to Council, Deputy Mayor Armstrong. We did discuss the 5 bays for fire. I'm speaking for fire specifically. My partner here can speak for himself. But with all of this taking place, I reached out to Peterborough County EMS, to their superintendent and the CAO, and I'd asked them the question of would they have any interest in a shared space if we were to move forward with such a project. And they said absolutely they would be. So moving forward from that, myself and the CAO, Donna, went in and had a meeting with the CAO of the county and EMS. And they happened to mention that this fits in perfectly with their strategic planning for the county and so on and so forth, to actually get an EMS unit in a more permanent situation in Trent Lakes. So long story short, we upped this plan by 1 bay, which would allow them some space, some office space as well for them to do their paperwork and whatnot. And then this would turn into a lease type of agreement. I don't have any specific numbers because, like Evan was saying, we don't have any solid rock bottom sizes or anything like that. So in the past, what EMS has done is they go on a square footage and a cost analysis. So what they're going to use for space, how much they're going to be there, all of those things that go inside with that. So I wasn't prepared to bring that forward at this time because we were holding off till we actually knew what we were talking about. So we had to reach out to the county to make sure it was okay to bring that up today, because now it's public. But so yeah, that's the explanation for the 6 bay for the fire side.
Excellent. That's
So,
good news.
and over a term, I see it actually being beneficial to us as a community, financially as well.
Absolutely. No, the proximity of having their
It's
services.
a
is
cost recovery type of thing as well, so.
Excellent. And Public Works?
Yep. So thank you, Mayor, Deputy Mayor Armstrong, through you, Mayor Lambshead, to Deputy Mayor. So the Public Works, so I'm not sure the 2020, I wasn't here at that time. So I think some of the thought behind the four bays was that the four bays, that one of the trucks would have been operating out of the other depot, the 49 depot, which was being built. My intention is to remain, because right now we operate at 5 bays. There's 5 bays in the existing building and they're all full. So the intention was just to continue with what we have. So staying, status quo instead of trying to grow or anything. We're just basically what we have there, we're looking to have at the next one, just because we need it, sort of thing. And that's where the needs came from. Like I said, I believe the 2020, there was some stuff going on otherwise, but that's what my thought is why the 4 was proposed at that time.
Dawn, if I may.
Yes,
Through you,
absolutely.
Mayor Lambson. So just to make sure that we haven't duplicated it. So we didn't build in that to the 49 depot and we're also keeping it in Buckhorn. We're not doing that.
Exactly.
Okay.
So then that was with some of the, sorry, through you, Mayor Lambshead, to Deputy Mayor, and that's with some of the reductions that we had on that 49 depot sort of thing was sort of part of that in the plan. So.
And these are drive-through bays, correct? Like this is only 3 bays, but they're double bays.
Yeah.
And same with the fire, there's 2 full drive-through and
Well,
one is.
For fire, yes.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
through you, Mayor Lambshead. So for Public Works, we have 2 drive-through and 1 just pull in because it's
Yeah.
5 bays. So the other is like a storage sort of bay. So.
Okay, thank you.
And second question, thank you.
Here's Brad.
Obviously, the 12 million is a sticker shock. However many years it was ago, we were looking at replacing all of our public works and fire, and the total was 12 million for everything. So you all understand that. So I have sort of 2 questions around that. The first is, have we benchmarked similar facilities in the area and the cost associated with them? So we can see where we're at relative to other construction projects. And the second one is just around the trend. I'm not an expert in construction, but I do know that we had a spike in costs through COVID because supply chain disruptions, scarcity of materials, all those kinds of things. And I think it was our hope or assumption that that spike would start to come down and we would return to more normal year-over-year inflation. And I don't know that we've seen that correction in the costs of construction projects happen, or if we have, I would expect it to be somewhat reflected in these cost estimates. So maybe you can educate me on the construction market and why we're not seeing some correction after COVID that would make the numbers a little bit less prohibitive.
Thank you, Councillor, through the mayor. I'll try my best to go through the proper procedure here. The first question, benchmarking, the cost estimate was done by a professional cost estimating company, AJ Hooker out of Hamilton. We did benchmark the civil based off of prices we received in your other facility. We do have the contractor's pricing. Going forward, we will do a more local benchmarking. However, at this point, we rely on a third-party consultant that does this throughout the province. So they are professionals. This conceptual design period, they're the ones that we would use for benchmarking. As the design progresses past the conceptual and 30% to the 60% and the 80%, your plus minus goes down. I had a benchmark here, but at that point, we would start to look more at local pricing. For the civil, it's fairly easy. For the outside, for the gravel, the asphalt, your large ticket items outside. However, the interior fixtures, your steel, your building materials and such, that's more on provincial level. So I would probably still rely on the cost consultant. The second part, spike in cost, yes, we've seen it across the industry. I would say during COVID, the issue was not just price increase, but the lack of availability, especially of electrical components, was a huge issue. Costs of materials have gone down since COVID. However, labor costs have increased and I do not foresee them decreasing. Hourly wages for skilled staff, skilled workforce is not going to decrease. I can only foresee that increasing. There's staffing shortages across the construction industry. I see it in heavy civil. We have with other people we work with. There's just not the labor. The labor costs have gone up. I do foresee the cost of materials leveling out. I do not foresee them dropping down drastically pre-COVID. I would say housing costs are similar. Automobile replacements, vehicle replacements, it's just generally everything costs more. I don't foresee that changing.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Go ahead, Councillor Franzen.
Yeah, it's more a comment through you, Mayor, is I prefer to see one project completed and see what kind of cost savings or overrun there is before we embark on another project. It's important to me to do things linear that way. And personally, I'd like to defer this decision for the fall, when we're 100% sure of what the costs are on the 49 facility.
Any other comments or questions? For me, the 30% plus minus is a bit disturbing because we've just gone through almost all of this and we've been pretty accurate, I think, so far. If it was a 30% minus, the number would be like 10,000 and something you can almost digest and we can almost think of ways to finance, but at 12.5 plus 30%, it's a very difficult number for Trent Lakes. I mean, we're a small municipality. We have a very few ratepayers to draw from for taxation, which unfortunately at this point, we have no financial support from the province or the federal government for infrastructure like this. And this is hopefully something that should change in the near future. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Thank you, Mayor Lamson. I may have just lost the point. Oh, no. So directed through you, Mayor Lamson, directed for Steve and Evan. From your standpoint, because we need to meet the functional needs and the operational needs of those two departments. Obviously, that's our obligation in order to continue to provide services to our ratepayers. Are there any opportunities in your minds for cost reduction in this facility as it's presently designed? And that's either in size, number of bays, amenities, anything that's a component of this design. So you're closest to the ground, you know if there's anything that's optional. So kind of looking to you too for your expertise.
Through you, Mayor, to Deputy Mayor Armstrong. I definitely think there is, and one of them for us is EMS. We do a cost recovery with them, so the terminology I'm looking for here. Whatever they use in the building, hydro, they're part of all of that cost recovery. So hydro, whatever they use, radio light, whatever it happens to be, that is all part of what they would pay. And it's pretty substantial, really. I don't know if you'd get anybody else to lease the space for what they're willing to. I could see that saving in our staff being out more because the ambulance services there. It's going to give that level of service that we want to provide to our community. It's going to keep that. Our trucks are getting bigger. The demand for our services much more than it was. It's doubled in 10 years. The other one is this fire hall specifically was supposed to be done before the 49 Rose Garage was supposed to be replaced. So we've altered our rolling stock. We've done all of that stuff. And we're in limbo now again. So our stuff is getting older before it gets replaced because of. So, and it's getting to be more expensive at the end of the day as well. We've had conversations with Kevin if we could get something from our insurance company saying a sprinkler system would reduce our rates. That's an option we could look at. Do we need charging stations for electric vehicles? Are we there yet? Is that something we can add later? The design and location of this building on the property allows us for future growth to add another bay or something if need be, depending on the demand. But right now, if we didn't take ambulance, 5 days, we'd have it full the day it's built with the equipment we have now. So there's no room for growth that way. And this also includes the demolition of the existing buildings that are there, which is an undertaking in itself today. So whether we get anything back out of that for recycling or whatever, like I think there's there's options. It's just to get everything together, we need to know where we're going to actually, like the thought is there, we want reduction, obviously, but.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Armstrong, through you, Mayor Lamson. So just to sort of echo Steve's comments, looking at this when we were going through design, I always had the finance side and how much it would cost in the back of my mind, understanding the process we went through with the 49 depot replacement sort of thing. So looking at what Public Works needs, and there's maybe some savings on some fixtures and stuff like that, but the overall size and stuff is sort of unfortunate. It's sort of that's what we need to continue to operate. Any reduction in that size would obviously have an impact on any level of service and stuff like that. So unfortunately, there's maybe some savings as Steve sort of mentioned, and I can echo those. As Kevin mentioned, the possibility of reducing pavement and stuff like that. It's not something you necessarily want to look into, but it's definitely an option as we get into more detailed estimate. And I don't know if Kevin has any additional comments just regarding that.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thank you, Evan. I guess cost reduction, they all are minor items. At this point, if you hold off on design a couple of years, the only thing that the cost is going to go up. We are building a similar size facility for the township of Montague outside of Smith Falls. I would say they're even smaller tax base than you are now. It's not to say if you get to a point that the design's done, that it comes in, the cost estimate is over your cost, that you can't sit on that design for another year and get more funds available. The other thing is you've kind of gone car shopping and you've asked for a car, but you haven't given a price. Usually when an RFP is issued, a budget is given or some kind of direction is given in the design. So from my standpoint, again, we could have given you a 60% design and a cost estimate with your nice ±5 or 10 if that made you feel more comfortable. However, we would have spent more money, and if you at that point would have told me, I came for a Honda Civic, not a Cadillac, I did not want to spend the township's money and have to ask for a revision. We're just at the point where from a design standpoint, we need some direction about, is this, again, back to the start of the conversation, is this a number that might not be available this year, but maybe next year or the year after? If it's not, and the council is telling me that this is way out to lunch, then we need to tap the brakes on the design process and go back and we need to review. Again, we have a great relationship with the township. We don't want to proceed unless this is something that, even in the future is within your dollar figure range. And again, brick and mortar square foot price, it's not going to go up and down. I mean, it's not going to go down very much more. I can find you savings here and there, but I'm also giving you a big plus minus because I don't want to come in over. That would be my biggest fear. So yes, 30% plus minus, but we are at the point where I don't want to spend any more money in design, giving you something you don't want. And we just need direction to proceed forward or not. And if at this point you feel this number is too high, and still, I would say we would stop the design process until we were given a little more direction.
Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
If I may just follow up comments to those. Couple of things. First of all, I think there's a sense of urgency around this. And I don't think we can wait. So I don't think time is something we can play with on this one. We've been adjusting our buys and our manpower for years because we had outdated facilities that wouldn't accommodate trucks, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't think the time is something we should be playing with. The other point I wanted to make, and you raised it, Steve, or you raised it in my mind, is we're just looking at the capital cost of the building. But the reality is there are going to be some operational savings associated with going to this new building. Savings as well as revenue, as you pointed out. And some of those savings are we don't have to get customized trucks, and we may have better efficiencies in our labor, et cetera, et cetera. So we haven't really looked at that side of the equation. So there's a net figure in here somewhere, and I'm not asking you to do the business case for it, but I think we just need to recognize that there's a net cost after we take into account those savings on the operational cost sides. So that's all I have to say.
And there is an appetite with the county for this thing, that they're doing it a bit in Smith Ennismore, they're doing it in Millbrook Cabin. I think it's a great asset here. You would end up with likely a full-time ambulance van in that building, which we don't really have here right now. We have a summertime one. So in the wintertime, we're a little bit light on that service. And I think it's important for our ratepayers to get that service year round. I think it's a big dollar item. I wanted to go back to my analogy. You told me this was a ballpark figure. Is this a major league sports arena? Is this a hometown park, or are we having T-ball here?
Okay, thank you, Mayor. This is not a huge facility for a municipality this size. We've seen this. This is pretty standard size for the size municipality for the needs required. This is not a major league park. It will not be a thing of absolute beauty. It will be functional. And the other thing, just one other comment I'd like to make is there's also the yearly operational costs of the building. If you look at the heating costs and your electricity costs out there right now for that facility, they will go down. So there is a business case also to be made for your yearly operational costs of maintenance on the building, heat, hydro, all of those things will be modern in the new building, and will be yearly costs will be less.
That's good. You look like you have one more question.
No, I don't.
Go ahead, Councillor Brandon.
Just one more comment. We're missing one member of council today. This is a huge decision for the municipality. I think we should at least defer it to the next meeting.
I think, did you have a comment?
Yes, I could.
Go ahead.
Mayor. Through your mayor to council. And just to add more to Deputy Mayor Armstrong, the new facility is going to fit right in with our new cancer mitigation policies and all the ministry standards that are coming about us. They're not all here in writing today, but they are. So this building will require a ventilated room for our bunker gear and stuff like that. So it ventilates outside. It's a different option than we have here, where we can use the floor space and hang up the bunker gear and such. Laundering our equipment and all that stuff now is mandatory. That takes up more space than it used to. Washroom facilities are a whole different standard. That takes up a huge area. So all of those things are like completely out of our control. We're really, I don't want to say it sounds rude, but we're stuck with the apparatus space, so to speak, where you put your trucks. The rest of the stuff is pretty much dictated to us on what we're supposed to be doing.
And that's where
to
we,
mitigate people being off sick and all those good things in the future. Maybe not today, but
and all these things that are being added on to that, I mean, that's a significant amount of things for life safety. This is about our firefighters and their families not getting sick. So those are important, but there should be some provincial funding coming to help with all of this stuff. As they bring down more rules, we should be bringing down a few more dollars. And I think we need to bring that to the province. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Lampson. With respect to Councillor Franzen's point, I would like to go ahead and make the motion to receive the report and to approve the attached design as presented and direct staff to report back to us with funding options. We're not committing ourselves to anything at this stage. We're simply moving it forward. And I think we've determined, to my satisfaction, we've determined that this design meets the functional and operational needs of our two departments. And it's been on the books since our last facilities design plan. I think we need to move forward. Again, we're not making a commitment, but we're not holding up either.
Go ahead, Councillor Cassidy.
Seconded.
Second that motion. Any other conversation? I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. Okay. Try to keep it under 11 million, will you?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Single digits.
Yeah, single
Start the boot drive now.
9.95.
And I do understand that we will need some. Thank you very much, Evan. Thank you very much, Steve. Thank you very much. Kevin. Okay, we can move on now to item 10.2 of our agenda, which is recreation and facilities. 10.2.1 is Jenny Smith, our recreation and facilities coordinator. Would you like to speak to this item, Jenny?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council. that council received this report from myself, the coordinator of recreation and facilities, and this report is a policy exemption request. We are recommending to council that they deny this request. The policy in question is the Public Parks and Beaches rental policy. This policy facilitates rental agreements for the public in our open spaces. The rental policy has submission requirements, and the exemption is for our insurance minimum requirement. The Crystal Lake Cottagers Association has submitted a rental request. The rental request is for an event on June 29, 2024 at White's Beach. The event has an estimated 100 participants and will host minimal games. The exemption is requested for $3 million liability, and the municipality will be named as an additional insured instead of our policy that requires a minimum of $5 million liability. Our policy has been created by staff and approved by council. This policy aims to maintain consistency. The insurance minimum requirement was chosen to protect the municipality based on our own insurance and an acceptable standard. Our duty is to comply with the policy while providing safe opportunities for the public to rent our parks and beaches. Therefore, we recommend to maintain the current insurance minimum. However, if council wishes to approve this request, the event activities appear to be low risk and the $3 million may be sufficient. It should be recognized that granting the lower insurance exemption may increase the liability and financial risk to the municipality in the event of a lawsuit or claim. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anyone have any comments or questions for Jenny? Go ahead, Councillor Franzen.
Yeah, through the mayor. How many times have we rented with the $5 million that they provided $5 million liability on our beaches throughout the municipality?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, while I have been here, I haven't had any rental agreements for this liability insurance, but Dylan may be able to speak to that.
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Franzen. With the policy being relatively new and the request volume to our parks relatively low, we've only had maybe one or two, in all honesty, since we've approved the policy. So it's we don't get requests very often for the parks.
Okay. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Thank you, through Mayor Lamson. Thank you, Jenny, for that presentation. Well done. I feel like the Recreation Facilities Department has kind of got caught on this one, because since that policy was approved, we have lowered the insurance requirement in 2 other areas. We've done it for short-term rental down to 2 million. And the license of occupation policy, I think, is 2 million. I could be wrong on that. So the subsequent events, 5 is better. 10 would be lovely, but it's all about minimizing risk. And in this particular instance, I agree. I think it's a low risk event. I've been to it a couple of times. It's an annual Canada event that they put on. They get lots of kids. They bring an ice cream truck. It's a lot of fun. So it's no reflection on you or your policy. I think we just haven't updated it to be consistent with our other insurance requirements across the board. I realize they all have different levels of risk assessment, but I think it's probably appropriate that we revisit the $5 million for this one. And in the short term, at least, I would certainly support the application or request that they move forward with 3 million. That's more than what we have for a couple of other policies.
Any other comments? Go ahead, Councillor Cadigan.
I echo the deputy mayor's comments. I think that insurance companies are dictating to us what we need to insure ourselves as, and they're selling the product. I see a problem there. I feel like $3 million is lots, considering what's going to be happening there. I would like to go ahead and give them the reduction so they can save the $300, and hopefully we can get some good faith for it down the road.
Do you make that a motion? Did you make that?
I didn't really.
Okay, just, we may have more conversation. Go ahead, Joe.
That's it.
Okay. Yeah, I think if that was javelin throwing, I'm okay with the 5 million. but it's a few little kids playing on a beach. I think 3 million should be more than enough. And I do really think we should revisit that because we've changed that for other policies. I think it was probably a want from our insurance company and from our solicitor. I get it. I understand 5 million is not a lot of money in these days, but the odds of that happening there, I think, are pretty slim. So I certainly would support that. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
I will make the motion then that we approve the request from the Crystal Lake Cottagers Association. And we ask staff, or direct staff, to revisit that policy with regard to the insurance level requirement.
Go ahead, Dylan.
Through you, Mayor, to council, the deputy mayor, if we could maybe get some specific direction at what level of insurance that council would be comfortable with. We're actually going to be revising this policy to include some more venues as well over the coming months. So it would probably save a step of coming back if council provided some direction as to what insurance level that they deem would be appropriate.
So let me amend the motion to say, to have staff look at revising the insurance requirement to $2 million. However, as you get deeper into the risk assessment, maybe that's not appropriate, but it just seems to me that it ought to be fairly consistent across our policies, assuming that the risk level is somewhat comparable.
Are you okay with that amendment to the motion?
Yes.
Okay. Any other conversation? Okay, go ahead, Dylan. You have one.
Sorry. Thank you. Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to Deputy Mayor Armstrong. Thank you. That gives us some stuff to go back to, and kind of our process now when we're doing our bylaws and stuff is we are giving it to our insurer and our solicitor to kind of provide feedback on that, and if there's any significant case law or anything, we would assess that threshold of that. If there's nothing to trigger a warning, we'll go with that $2 million figure.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Councillor Franzen.
Through you, Mayor, just a comment. I think that's a great idea. We should make our facilities affordable that they're actually used, because we don't want to price them out of it.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other conversation? I'm seeing none. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Thank you very much, Dylan. Thank you very much, Jenny. You're welcome. We can move on to 10.3 of our agenda, which is fire and emergency services. 10.3.1. Steve Brockbank, our Director of Emergency Service. Would you like to speak to this item, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to council. Before you have a recommendation for a paging service agreement. It's a fairly in-depth report, so hopefully everybody got to read it. But if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, does anyone have any comments or questions on the two-sleep report?
Expensive day for a fire.
Go ahead, Councillor Gallagher.
The option that you're recommending sounds like the technology isn't quite ready for that yet. You anticipate when it's going, or is it in place, the bell?
Yes, so through you, Mayor Lamb said to Councillor Cadigan, it is not in place. They're just waiting for the last agreement to be accepted or signed, which would be Trent Lakes, just because of the way the council meetings line up. But Bell is actually building this infrastructure. So it's going to be, there's an existing tower at Flynn's and they do have other stuff in place, but they are putting some towers up in between other towers to make the coverage better.
So through you, Mayor. Currently, we're going to continue with the current paging system.
Yes.
For 6 months.
Yeah, we're hoping that. This has been a lot longer process than anticipated because of changes and stuff at Task Communications itself. Since that, the county has bought another program that is running through Peterborough Dispatch in the background at the moment. So as soon as we say we're done with Task Communications, they're able to shut their system down. So that is any day now ultimately, and then that will tie us over until the Bell is up and running. So we're hoping the 6 to 9 month window. But it comes with backup generators, power, service agreement. It's NFPA certified, all of that stuff that we've never had in the past.
Go through you. So dual system so that
Yeah.
dispatch is separate from communication.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the radios will be different than the paging. And then we have the app as well. Plus our department's beneficial because every firefighter has a portable radio as well. So that's another redundancy It's just, this is a certified system, and the last few years with the storms and whatnot that happens, we're kind of running around fending for ourselves.
It would be nice to have backups.
It would. Will this mean more work by dispatch in the city of Peterborough? Like, not really.
So through you, Mayor Lamb said to Councillor Cadigan, this will all be pretty much behind the scenes at Peterborough Fire. But because they're a dispatch center, they're involved in it to make sure it meets all of their standards and regulations. But yeah, this will be standalone. So if there's any work or maintenance or anything required or whatever, Bell will be looking after that through an agreement through Peterborough Fire.
As you know, they're getting busier and busier, taking over Belleville now.
Mhm.
So this should eliminate issues at dispatching with pages not going out and all of that type of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Any other comments or questions? I'm seeing none. Anyone prepared to make the motion? Go ahead, Councillor Cadigan.
I will make a motion that we receive the report, that we support the entering into an agreement with Bell Canada for paging services, and that the mayor and director of community services be directed to execute the contract with Bell for paging services.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that motion? Be Councillor Franzen for a seconder. Any other conversation? I'm seeing none. I will call for the vote. All in favor? Motion has carried. Thank you very much, Steve.
Thank you.
Okay, we can move on now to item 10.4 of our agenda, which is building and planning. 10.4.1, Adele Arbor, our planner. Would you like to speak to this item, please?
Yes, thank you. And through you, Mayor Lambshead, this report is in reference to Bill 185, Cutting Red Tape to Build More Homes Act 2024, and the proposed provincial planning statement 2024. On April 10th, the province released Bill 185 for a 30-day comment period, and it has also received second reading. The proposed act is very expansive and introduces a variety of legislative changes focused on the development of policy creating more homes within the province. This report highlights the proposed changes which may have an impact to the municipality. In 2022, input was sought from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing regarding the integration of the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe and the provincial policy statement. The new proposed legislation focuses on finalizing this work based on the comments previously received to produce the provincial planning statement. This draft PPS continues to support compact development and the creation of complete communities within settlement areas, increasing intensification where it may be appropriate. However, this is not being mandated, and it is left to local municipalities to make these decisions. In reference to the natural heritage system, it doesn't appear that there are any changes proposed from the current PPS 2020. However, through the repeal of the growth plan, there is no longer legislation that dictates a 30-meter vegetative protection zone immediately adjacent to significant key hydrologic features. What this means is that policies will require an environmental impact study or a natural heritage evaluation to be completed when development is proposed adjacent to significant features and unevaluated wetlands. Changes to the Planning Act include consideration to the backlog of appeals that exists with the OLT currently, which is causing delays in potential housing. No appeals is being proposed to be extended to official plans, official plan amendments, and zoning bylaws and zoning bylaw amendments. Public meetings will remain as part of the planning process. Council will continue to receive comments on planning applications in order to make an informed decision, taking into consideration any and all comments and concerns from the public. There will be a few exceptions to no appeals relating to commenting agencies and decisions related to settlement areas. Regarding lapsing provisions for draft plan of subdivision and condominium in the Planning Act, it is proposed that the date can't be less than 3 years and should not exceed a timeline in which development could be registered. This proposed change encourages and commits developers to proceed with development and not sit on approvals, aiming again to build more homes faster. Regulatory changes to accessory residential units are proposed, wherein accessory units will be exempt from the Planning Act provisions that regulate zoning and minor variances, and regulations will be put in place that are yet to be developed for accessory units. Community service facilities such as long-term care homes, hospitals, and schools will be subject to regulation yet to be determined by the province, again allowing these types of development to proceed quickly. It is also proposed that the Planning Act be amended to remove mandatory pre-consultation, refunding of fees, and declaration of complete applications within 30 days. Municipal Act changes include opening the door to permit bonusing. Changes to the Development Charges Act proposed to reverse a previous amendment and include a municipality's ability to collect for eligible capital costs. Similarly, repealing DC rate freeze on zoning bylaw amendments and site plans and the 5-year phase-in. This is an attempt to ensure that development which is not proceeding quickly doesn't receive DC discounts. Attached to this report is a memorandum from Watson and Associates to their municipal clients regarding the proposed changes. These proposed modifications will necessitate amendments to the municipality's recently approved DC bylaws, so they may be brought into alignment with the new legislation. Therefore, Mr. Mayor, it's being recommended that council receive the report from the planner regarding Bill 185 and the proposed provincial policy statement 2024 for information, and that council direct staff to forward a copy of this report to the County of Peterborough and local MPP. And I'd also like to add to that recommendation and that we update or upload this report to the Environmental Registry of Ontario, because the deadline for 30-day comment period is over on May 10th. So I'd like to get that off to the province. And this will form the municipality's formal comments regarding Bill 185 and the proposed provincial planning statement 2024. Be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Okay, thank you very much, Adele Arbor. Is there anyone have any comments or questions? Go ahead, Councillor Cadigan.
Through you, Mayor Lamb, said to the planner, does this mean that someone can build an in-law cottage now in their yard and it circumvents our Planning Act? Like, is that what they're indicating here?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is yet to be determined because we haven't seen the regulations that they're going to put in place. But they're indicating that they're not going to be looking at zoning provisions or variances, that they're going to put regulations that will help somebody do secondary units a lot quicker. So what those regulations are and what it'll look like is yet to be determined, but that is a possibility.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Cadigan, one more time.
My next question through you, Mayor, to our planner is regarding agricultural land. Are they looking to build houses on agricultural land as well? Is that what I'm reading into this?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
Any other comments or questions? Go ahead, Councillor Franzen.
Just building on what Councillor Cadigan mentioned, there still would be the exemption for the capacity cold water lakes.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we'd like to keep that in. Don't forget the County of Peterborough. We have a draft official plan that embeds some of those policies in that document, and it's currently with the ministry for approval. And as these legislative changes come into effect, we'll be amending that document so we can have an approved document. But we certainly would like to, I guess, instill our values to the province around these lakes that are highly sensitive, and we would like to keep those restrictions in place.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions? I'm seeing many changes in our planning and building stuff. I think it's and more to come. I don't think we're done yet. I think the province is moving ahead with their want to build more homes. Thank you very much for that report, Adele. Is anyone prepared to make a motion? Seeing Deputy Mayor Armstrong, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I will make the motion that we receive the report and thank you for digesting all of that legislative wording for us. And the council directs staff to forward a copy of the report to the County of Peterborough and our local MPP.
And I think you had another line in there, did you not, Adele? It's to go to,
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's correct, and that the report be uploaded to the Environmental Registry of Ontario.
Thank you.
I'll add that.
okay, thank you. Okay, do I have a seconder for that motion? See Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. Any other conversation? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Okay, thank you very much, Adele. We can move on to 10.4.2 of our report, which is Adele Arbor, our planner. Would you like to speak to this item, please?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor Lambshead, this report reviews existing planning application and planning service fees and is recommending an increase to the existing tariff of planning fees, as well as the introduction of new planning application and service fees. Our existing fees have remained the same for approximately 10 plus years. So we, through our department, thought it was time to review the various fees and look at increasing them. During our review of these fees, staff utilized an activity-based costing approach, which outlined the estimated hours for a particular task associated with each planning application process to determine a proposed fee. In addition, staff reviewed planning application fees of the 7 other lower tier municipalities within Peterborough County, and a full cost recovery analysis was not undertaken. The report recommends 2 types of zoning bylaw amendment applications, minor and major, and fees associated with each type of the amendment. A minor amendment would be something similar to an amendment requested from a standard consent application that goes to the county, and that would be produced or processed by municipal planning staff as we currently do. Major amendments would be more complex applications and would be forwarded to the external planning consultant for analysis and review. In practice, planning fees do not capture the municipality's entire costs of processing applications. Cost recovery is being increased from 49% to 88%. The reality of partial recovery reflects the fact that reviewing planning and development applications is in the public interest. Some portion of the review fees should be funded through the general property taxes. Staff are also proposing a new combined official plan and zoning bylaw amendment fee, as the 2 applications could be processed concurrently, resulting in cost savings to the applicant. There was also a number of planning services being provided to the public, which there is no associated fee. So this report introduces new fees for these services. Setting fees to provide for a more cost recovery is necessary to ensure that applicants and developers are paying for their development instead of the general taxpayer. Development paying for development. On behalf of the municipality, Watson and Associates undertook a peer review of the staff report, and their detailed memorandum is attached to the report. Basically, Watson and Associates were in general agreement with the costing approach utilized by staff and commented that such is considered best practice in a municipal context when costing application processing activities. It was identified that the overall planning application fees are reasonable and defensible. The Watson memorandum discusses alternative approaches to fee analysis, which would garner higher fees. In reference to comments made by Watson and Associates, the report includes a response provided by planning staff. In summary, staff highlight the following points. Staff have made the necessary revisions as identified by Watson in terms of some of the numbers not jiving with the total number of hours. So that's been revised. Reference to the utilization of the planning technician position, 193%, represents a thorough undertaking of each task in the process and takes into consideration the various disruptions throughout the day. This review time would be undertaken by the planner and external planning services in times when the planning technician is at full capacity. The staff effort estimates, costing approach, and proposed fee increases appears reasonable and justifiable. Based on the proposed fee increases, planning staff are recommending and are suggesting that the new fees be phased in. The proposed planning application and service fees are outlined in Appendix C to the report. Therefore, Mr. Mayor, it's being recommended that council receive the report on planning application and services from the planner, and further that council direct staff to prepare an implementing bylaw for May 21st, 2024 council meeting to increase current planning application fees, provide for new application and planning service fees as outlined in Appendix B to this report, and further that council phase in the proposed fee increases to 50% for the remainder of the 2024 calendar year, with the full amount being charged starting January 1, 2025, and further that council direct staff to include a yearly increase by the Consumer Price Index up to a maximum of 2% and rounded to the nearest dollar starting in 2026. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Okay, thank you very much, Adele Arbor. Does anyone on council have any questions? I'm seeing none. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Cadigan.
My question is more of a comment, but through you, Mayor, how do we encourage more building by raising fees? Like, it feels counterproductive.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think we would be competitive in terms of having similar fee structure as other municipalities in the county. How do you encourage planning application? We have quite a few planning applications that come through the department. I don't know that lowering the fees or having lower fees would encourage more application.
Any other comments or questions? I have a question about the couple in there of a $4,000 deposit. That seems a bit heavy. Do we have
Through you, Mr.
justification for
Mayor,
that? Go ahead.
currently we have a $4,000 fee deposit. And if that amount isn't used up with external planning services, then we will return the deposit, whatever portion is left over, to the applicant.
Thank you very much. Yes, that's only for 3 or 4 different applications. It's not for all of them. It's just, okay, thank you very much, Adele. Any other comments or questions? I'm seeing none. Is anyone prepared to make a motion? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
With the comment first, which is just that this is a very, very thorough report. I asked a lot of questions the first time it came up, but it seems you've addressed it from every angle, both an internal review, a benchmarking review, a peer review. And so it looks like it's been through all of the tests that it needed to. And I very much appreciate the fact that we're phasing in. I don't like when we make things effective the date that we approve it by council without any notice or phasing in. So to me, that's the most important provision we've made. So with that, make the motion that council receive the report, that we direct staff to prepare an implementing bylaw for a May 21st council meeting, that we phase in the proposed fee increases, 50% for the remainder of this year, and the full amount starting January 1st next year. And finally, that council directs staff to include a yearly increase by the Consumer Price Index up to a maximum of 2%, rounded to the nearest dollar starting in 2026.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that motion? See Councillor Franklin. Any other comments, questions? I'm seeing none. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. Okay. We can move on now to 10.4.3, which is Derek Bertram, our planning technician. Would you like to speak to this item? Thank you very much, Adele. Right.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor and members of council. On today's agenda, there are 2 municipal appraisal forms for consent files B31 and B3224 submitted by Buckhorn Sand and Gravel on behalf of 5023202 Ontario Limited. The intent of the application is to sever 2 lots from the property known municipally as 105 Nichols Cove Road. The proposed residential lots shall both have 3.09 acres respectively, with approximately 450 feet of municipal road frontage. Staff have reviewed the applications and recommend that council supports the consent application for the creation of 2 new lots with the conditions outlined in the municipal appraisal form. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Derek Bertram. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Derek? I'm seeing none. Is there a motion? No, any questions? Okay.
Motion to approve.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that motion? The Councillor Franzen for a seconder. Any other conversation? I'm seeing none. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. Thank you very much, Derek, for your report. We can move on to 10.4.4 of the agenda, which is Derek Bertram, our planning technician. Would you like to speak to this item?
Thank you. And through you, Mayor Lambshead, members of council, we have another municipal appraisal form for consent B3924, which has been submitted by agent Kevin Dugay of KMD Planning on behalf of owners Joe Campbell, Malcolm Murray, and Malia Rimrod. The purpose of the application is a lot line addition in favor of 23 Fire Route 133, which is the neighboring parcel to the east of the proponent's lot, known municipally as 135 Fire Route 133. Sorry, 35 Fire Route 133. Staff have reviewed the application and recommend that council support the consent application for the lot line adjustment with the conditions outlined as well in the municipal appraisal form. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Derek. Does anyone have any comments or questions? Go ahead, Councillor Cadigan.
Through you, Mayor. What is the reason for the lot line adjustment? Do you know, is it?
Through you, Mayor Lambshead to Cadigan, that wasn't actually disclosed in the application. We did a review of the file as well, and I believe there was this application made before or conversation made before by the same agent, but they didn't disclose that information at the time either. It does appear that it's bringing it slightly more into conformity in terms of size with the Shoreline Residential Private Access lot. The house is very close on 23 Fire Route 133 to the lot line. So this most likely, I would assume, is going to provide them a little more opportunity to not be encroaching so much on the neighboring parcel.
Thank you.
I'm quite familiar with that piece of property. I've been by that many times and I know the exact reason why it's being changed. They've been using that property for many, many years, thinking that it was their own and now they're going to make it. So I think it's a very good process. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? I'm seeing none. Go ahead, Councillor.
Motion to support.
Motion to support. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. Any other conversation? I'm seeing none. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. Okay, thank you very much, Derek Bertram. We can move on to item 10.5 of our agenda, which is finance, and 10.5.1 is Donna Taggart, our CAO treasurer. Would you like to speak to this item, please?
Yeah. Thank you, and through you. So for council's information, accounts payable for the month of March.
Hey, anyone have any comments or questions of Donna? Seeing none. My only comment is that I'm liking to see that a lot of our payments are electronic still, so it's excellent. Thank you. Saves a little paper. Okay. Anyone prepared to make a motion? Go ahead, Councillor Franzen.
Motion to receive.
Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a seconder. Okay. Any other conversation? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Okay, we can move on to item 10.6 of our agenda, which is administration, and 10.6.1 is Donna Taggart, our CAO treasurer. Would you like to speak to this item, please?
Yes, thank you, and through you. So before you is the Q1 report for 2024. And as I typically do, I'll just give you an overview of some of the highlights. So you will see that operations continue to be very busy for all departments. Some of the initiatives that were completed, there was the completion and presentation of the 2024 budget and 2023 financial audit. A draft short-term rental accommodation licensing bylaw was completed, which is now out for public feedback. There was a new template and procedure developed for limited tendering and advanced contract award notifications. Q1 included a gain of 551 social media followers with 11,491 more website page visits and on the municipality's website between Q1 2024 and 2023. The first Trent Lakes public monthly e-newsletter was released, and there are 588 subscribers to that, and actually that's gone up quite a bit since Q1. There was an increase in building and planning permits issued, with 49 being issued during Q1, which is up 15 from 2023. During Q1, there was a new development charge bylaw brought to council for approval, and 2 AMP penalty fines issued for dog complaints. Fire and emergency services continue to see an increase in call volumes, with 128 incidents happening during Q1 and 1,406 hours of training completed. There were 223 tons of garbage received, which is consistent with the 2023 numbers. Construction of the new build at the 49 site reached about 40% completion during Q1, and work is on schedule for completion in the fall. There were 187 work orders completed by rec and facility staff, with taking about 246 hours. And they did implement a new operations management software for efficiencies and cost savings. And this reporting also includes an update on all of the various plans that are in place and the initiatives for 2024, with an update status for each. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Donna Taggart. Does anyone have any comments or questions? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Thank you, Mayor Lamson. I just have to say, I love this report.
I must concur.
I really do. First of all, I think we are, the standard bearer for this kind of reporting on our service levels and activity and so forth amongst all the municipalities. So I think staff should be really proud of how this has shaped over time and how informative it is. I just wish more residents saw it or took the time to review it. It's hard to single out any one department because everybody's doing such a great job. But I do want to say that we're starting to see some real improvement's not the right word. We're seeing some impact from our communications coordinator with the increase in people that are now subscribing to our website and our social media, the number of news releases that are going out. So it's noticeable in the community, I think, that we're starting to have a communications presence. So at the risk of slighting everybody else, I just wanted to point that one out.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Armstrong. Any other comments? I just have one myself. It's very similar to Deputy Mayor's. It's an amazing amount of information. It must take forever to gather and put into graphs and things, and it's fantastic. And I wish more people would read it because there is a lot of stuff getting done in the municipality of Trent Lakes, and thank you everyone for that. Okay, any other comments or questions? I would entertain a motion. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Motion to receive.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Franzen for a seconder. Any other conversation? I'm seeing none. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. Thank you very much, Donna, for that report, and thank you everyone, to all of our staff for getting all the information to us. Greatly appreciated. Okay, we can move on to item 10.7 of our agenda, which is corporate services. We have none. So we can move on to item 11 of our agenda, which is correspondence for information. We have the Lakehurst Hall Board, if anyone wants to speak to that or is prepared to make a motion. Go ahead.
Just the grumpy old man side of me. When I read purchasing from Amazon, I just think that we should make an effort in purchasing locally. If it's not available locally, I understand ordering from Amazon.
Thank you for your comment. Quote unquote grumpy old man side.
Yeah.
Okay, anyone prepared to make a motion? Go ahead, Councillor Caddy.
Motion to receive.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that motion? I'm seeing Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a seconder. Any other conversation? I'm seeing none. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Okay, we can move on to item 12 of our agenda, which is correspondence for action. We have quite a few on the agenda. If anyone wants to speak to them all at one time, or we can do them one at a time. Go ahead. Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Mayor Lansing, I would like to speak to 12.1.
Okay, I
Pull
think,
it out.
I think these are all fairly important. We probably should just do them one at a time and go through them all. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Thank you.
12.1.
As most people probably know, the Canadian government has proposed that the capital gains tax be increased from 50% to 67% in June, which is both very rapid and presents a particularly hard burden for people who own cottages. Because now they may, if they sell them, they will face a higher capital gains tax. But more importantly, if they choose to gift it to their children, when their children inherit it, they will have to pay a higher capital gains tax. And we know that it's sometimes been difficult for that next generation to afford even the maintenance and regular property taxes of the cottage. But if they have an increased capital gains tax burden, they may be forced to sell it rather than keep it in the family. So the intention of it, was good to capitalize those that have more different kinds of income to support the government. But unfortunately, I think this is an unintended consequence that will fall particularly heavily on cottage owners who are not necessarily the wealthiest 1%. So FOCA, among others, has raised opposition to this. And I would just like for this council to also support their opposition.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Armstrong. Any other comments or questions? Go ahead.
Reading through that statement, I have a little bit of an issue because I think waterfront ownership, and I think we should consider it waterfront ownership, not cottages. That's how we recognize it in the municipality. Waterfront ownership is becoming very expensive. It's owned by some very wealthy people. We're talking about people that are building 3,000, 4,000 square foot cottages. It's no longer the 2x4 stick cottage that people would throw sleeping bags on the floor for extra guests to use. We're talking about people that are putting granite countertops in their cottages. We're talking pretty excessive cottages, so I understand the concern because there's a strong feeling that people have to the cottages, probably stronger than to what they have for their homes that are away from the area. So I'm torn on this.
Yeah, I mean, just rest assured, we don't have all cottages that are what you just described. There's many still that are reasonable sized cottages that are meant to be a cottage and used as a cottage, and the next generation might not be able to afford to do it if they have to pay that kind of money in capital gains. Okay, did you make that a motion?
I will make a motion that we support.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that motion? See Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. Any other conversation? I'm seeing none. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Okay, we can move on to 12.2 of our agenda, which is Peterborough County and Township of Selwyn's Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee. Would anyone like to speak to that item? Seeing none. Is anyone prepared to make a motion about that item? I think this is kind of falls down with the whole, we need to do something now, not in 10 years, because we're falling behind on our strategic recommendations of our accessibility ideas. We certainly need some financial help from other levels of government as well. Is anyone prepared to make a motion of any kind? Go ahead, Councillor Cadigan.
Motion to receive.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? I see Councillor Franzen for a seconder. Any other conversation? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. Okay. We'll move on to item 12.3 of our agenda, which is Hastings County Sustainable Infrastructure Funding for Small Rural Municipalities. Anyone like to speak to that item?
Motion to receive.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for that motion? See Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. Any other conversation? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. We can move on to item 12.4 of our agenda, which is housing funding. Would anyone like to speak to that item or make a motion? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Motion to receive.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. Any other conversation? I'm seeing none. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. We can move on to item 12.5 of our agenda, Municipality of Trent Hills Funding Social Services. Would anyone like to speak to that item or make a motion? Go ahead. Councillor.
Motion to receive.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that motion? Seeing Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. Any other conversation? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. We can move on to item 12.6 of our agenda, which is Conservation Authorities Act, West Perth. Anyone like to speak to that item? I see
Motion to
Councillor-
receive.
Okay, do we have a seconder for that motion? I see Councillor Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a seconder. Any other conversation? I'm seeing none. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. And we can move on to the amended section of our agenda, which is 12.7, the BCC correspondence. Anyone like to speak to that item? Go ahead, Councillor Cadigan.
Motion to support.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that motion? I see Councillor Franzen for a seconder. Any other conversation? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Okay, thank you very much, Council, for going through that. We can move on to item 13 of our agenda, which is bylaws. And item 13.1 is bylaws on our agenda memorandum. And Jesse Clark, can you speak to this item? Clerk.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mayor Lamshead, there was one bylaw on today's agenda that didn't have a corresponding staff report or was not part of a public meeting, and that's B 2024-36, which is a bylaw to authorize the execution of an assignment and assumption agreement for the Buckhorn Regional Health Center.
Okay, thank you very much, Jesse. Okay, we can move on to 12.2 of our agenda, which is that bylaw just previously described. Is anyone prepared to make a motion? See Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a mover. Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. Any conversation? I'm seeing none. I will call for all in favor. That motion is carried. Thank you very much, Donna, for helping get that done. We can move on to item 13.3 of our agenda, which is execution agreement for radio services for Bell Mobility. Would anyone like to make a motion or speak to that? Go ahead, Councillor Cadigan.
Motion to receive or in support.
Motion for support. Okay, do I have a seconder for that motion? See Councillor Franzen for a seconder. Any other conversation? I'm seeing none. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Okay, we can move on to item 14 of our agenda, which is the business arising out of a previous meeting. Any members of council have any business arising out of a previous meeting? See none. We can move on to item 15, which is notices of motion. Item 15.1, Councillor Braybrook, re the Buckhorn parking, and I do believe Deputy Mayor Armstrong is going to speak to this motion as Councillor Braybrook is not here today.
Thank you, Mayor Lamshead. I hope I do it justice. It's an important notice of motion. I will preface it by saying that both Councillor Braybrook and I attended the CIP Community Improvement Program open house at the BCC about a month ago. And half of the conversation was focused on the unsafe walking and pedestrian situation in the hamlet of Buckhorn. And I think Councillor Braybrook has very much picked up on that. I won't read through all of the whereases, but we do know that in the better weather, we have many visitors coming into the hamlet of Buckhorn. We also have probably the busiest lock. It is the busiest lock on the Trent Severn waterway. So lots of tourists who are walking around the town. And we get cars that are parked up on the sidewalk, on the sides of the roads. Councillor Braybrook included a number of pictures of that in his submission, which make it very dangerous to see around the parked cars. They make it very dangerous for pedestrians who are trying to go around them, go across the street, etc. So the request is basically, and I would say that there is also a parking regulation that covers this. It is a county road. And the two regulations are that any municipal walkway or portion of a municipal right-of-way between the curb line or the lateral line of a roadway and the adjacent property line, primarily intended for the use of pedestrians is considered a sidewalk. And the other regulation is that no person shall park a vehicle, including equipment and or a commercial motor vehicle, on the highways or roadways or portions thereof within the jurisdiction of the county as provided for, blah, blah, blah. So the motion that Councillor Braybook is putting forward is that therefore it be resolved that the municipality of Trent Lakes requests Peterborough County erect no parking signs on the Lakehurst Road from Fulton Lane to 1911 Lakehurst Road in Buckhorn on both sides of the road, and if feasible and allowable by bylaw, to have the sign state that in addition to the no parking, the vehicle may be ticketed or towed. And I would add to that, that we request that the county enforce that bylaw.
Okay, thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Armstrong, for repeating that. And go ahead, Councillor Cadigan.
Seconded.
Okay.
With a question.
Okay, go ahead with your question.
Through you, Mayor, is our AMPS program going to apply these tickets, or who is giving out the tickets in this case?
Sure.
My understanding, and I'm looking at our planner who will correct me if I'm wrong, is that the county has jurisdiction over that, and that they have the AMP system in place for parking, and that they have outsourced that to the city's bylaw enforcement department. Now, how that works, I do not know, but that's the arrangement.
Okay, that is the arrangement, I think, but anyone able to comment on that any further, or is we just?
I just wanted to make a comment.
Sure,
I was also at the CIP meeting.
I'm sorry, my apologies.
No problem. But I did discuss with our CAO how we could maximize our parking in Buckhorn. And CAO has some very good suggestions. Maybe we could receive a report on how we could maximize our parking in summertime.
I think that's important because you're eliminating a few parking spaces that are honestly dangerous for pedestrians, because if you park on the curb, there's nowhere to go other than out onto the street to walk around the park. So I agree with this. And I think a report, if we could find some better and alternative parking in our downtown, that would be kind of nice.
Yeah, even maximize what we have. I mean, we do have parking at the library that's not being used on Sundays, and we do have parking at the medical center that's not used when the medical center is not open.
Yeah.
So there are different areas that we could maximize whatever parking we have.
Overflow at the top of the hill. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Franzen. I would add to that we constructed new parking spaces in the last 4 years by the church at the Odening Park and up by Pizza Laura, which is municipal property. So the parking, I think, exists. It's probably a matter of signage, and look forward to some of the recommendations from staff to direct people towards that.
Very small amount of enforcement goes a long way. Okay. Any other? Go ahead, Adele Arbor, our planner.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think part of that report, I'll include some information regarding the AMPS. I recall when I was doing some research on the CIP information and background, I thought maybe the county had given the municipality jurisdiction within the Buckhorn area. So I would like to explore to see whether our AMPS would be applicable in that area, even though it is a county road. So we'll take a look at that and include the information in the report.
Go ahead, Jesse. You have a question?
Sorry, thank you through you, Mayor Lambshead. I don't know if Councillor Franzen's comment was meant to be an amendment to the motion that's on the floor, but perhaps I could recommend that we vote on the existing one and do a separate motion regarding a report, because this will be going to the county.
Okay. So we've had comments and questions. Any more comments on the original motion? I'm seeing none. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. Okay, so now Councillor Franzen, would you like to make another motion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that that staff create a report on how we can maximize the parking in the Buckhorn area.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. Any other conversation regarding that? I'm seeing none. I will call for a vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. Okay, we move on to item 16 for information items. Anyone have any information items? Go ahead, Councillor Franzen.
Yeah, on the 27th of April, there was an auction and dinner at Galway Hall. That was very well attended. I'd estimate around 200 people attended, and that it was very successful, and it was a great dinner. And John Braybrook and his wife also were at that function.
Okay, thank you for the update. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Thank you, Mayor Lamson. On April 29th, the Buckhorn District Tourist Association had a spring fling for local businesses held at the Kawartha Winery. They had about 50 people attending it, which is an increase over what they've had over their earlier and previous functions. They've expanded their board, and I would say that their communications have also become more widespread and prevalent and frequent. They have a newsletter now that is reliably sent out monthly. So it's nice to see that they're getting some presence and increasing their communications.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Deputy Mayor Armstrong. Any other comments or questions? I'm seeing none. Okay, we can move on to item 17 of our agenda, which is a closed meeting. Item 17.1, we are going into closed for Ontario Municipal Act, Section 239(2), to discuss B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, C, a proposal or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, proposed acquisition, and E, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, statement of claims. I would entertain a motion to go into close. See Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a mover, Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. We are.
Mr. Mayor, we have
We can certainly take a 5-minute break. Absolutely. Okay, we can move on now to 7.2 of our agenda, which is rise from a closed meeting. I would entertain a motion of same. See Councillor Cadigan for a mover and Councillor Franzen for a seconder. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. We can move on now to business arising out of the closed meeting. And 18.1 is the adoption of the minutes from our closed meeting. Would anyone prepared to make that motion? The Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a mover, Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. Any conversation about the minutes? I'm seeing none. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. We can move on to item 19 of our agenda, which is adoption of our confirming bylaw. Item 19.1 is our confirming bylaw. I would entertain a motion to adopt it. Seeing Councillor Cadigan for a mover and Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a seconder, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. We can move on to item 20 of our agenda, which is adjournment. I would entertain a motion to adjourn. I see Councillor Cadigan for a mover, Councillor Franzen for a seconder. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to council. Thank you to staff. Thank you to everyone that was in the gallery, both virtually and physically.